1,500 years ago, they vanished without a trace. Their sudden return, as if by fate, caught the world by surprise. A shadow darkened the sun, and a fear unlike any other gripped their hearts, rotting their very souls. This is not the familiar story of Pompeii's destruction told in history books. I'm here to reveal something far more haunting, the story of people who were frozen in time, caught in their last moments of life. If you are ready to experience an event harsher than any horror tale, sit back and imagine a journey stretching over 2,000 years. Picture a group of 13 fugitives, ordinary men and women, trying desperately to escape the city. A searing wind of 350 degrees struck them, and in a heartbeat, life was extinguished. Some slept peacefully, some clutched each other, whispering prayers to the gods, while others simply froze in place. They never knew their fate was sealed, yet their final hours would leave a story that echoes across millennia, a chilling testament to nature's unstoppable power. In 79 AD, Pompeii thrived as a bustling city of 15,000, nestled along the coast of what is now Italy. Its fertile volcanic soil yielded crops far richer than those of neighboring Roman cities, and the port welcomed traders from distant lands, enriching the city beyond measure. Wealthy Romans built villas for leisure, escaping the heat and chaos of urban Rome, while gladiators fought in arenas, entertaining crowds a century before the Colosseum existed. Brothels and taverns pulsed with life. Slaves tended to every whim, and citizens immersed themselves in baths, shops, and festivals. The city's streets overflowed with taverns and inns for sailors and travelers, and the bakeries, like that of Tyrannus Nero and his wife, thrived as the lifeblood of daily life. They were a wealthy couple, proud of their shared work and home, blissfully unaware that catastrophe loomed on the horizon. Temples filled with worshippers stood alongside dark rituals and charms meant to sway fate, showing that belief in both gods and magic was woven into the very fabric of Pompeian life. Even as the city buzzed with daily life, unease had begun to creep in. Weeks of trembling earth had rattled the citizens, rupturing water pipes, crippling baths, and leaving many worried for their safety. Half the population, including the wealthy, had already fled, yet the dormant volcano, 8 kilometers away, remained largely ignored, its subtle warning signs dismissed as inconsequential. Mount Vesuvius, Europe's most active volcano, would soon awaken with devastating force, a reminder that nature does not heed human schedules. On the morning of October 24th, 79A, the mountain roared to life, throwing citizens into streets filled with confusion and fear. At first, the eruption seemed manageable, a spectacle rather than a threat, but soon, the sight of ash and smoke rising like a monstrous wall over the city sparked panic. What began as tremors escalated into a terrifying, unstoppable force that no Pompeian could comprehend or outrun, setting the stage for a disaster that would echo through centuries. By midday, the volcano erupted again, far more violently than the first. The power unleashed was incomprehensible, thousands of times more intense than the atomic force humanity would only learn about millennia later. Lava, ash, and pumice shot skyward at a staggering rate, destroying roofs and throwing citizens into streets filled with debris. A 35-kilometer column of smoke, ash, and pumice dominated the sky, lightning splitting through the blackened clouds, illuminating the terror below. People ran, trying to find shelter, clinging to makeshift protection, while many were crushed beneath their collapsing homes. Streets became impassable, filled with stones and ash, trapping the helpless. Archaeologists later discovered hundreds who had perished beneath the falling debris. In nearby Herculaneum, the eruption had already buried the entire population. Bread, eggs, and even a baby's carbonized form remained as haunting reminders of lives abruptly extinguished, their stories preserved by the volcanic ash for 2,000 years. The final, fatal wave arrived in a terrifying instant. a pyroclastic flow of 350 degrees traveling at 100 kilometers per hour, sweeping through Pompeii with unstoppable force. Those who had survived the falling debris were consumed without warning, unable to see, hear, or feel anything as life ended in an instant. The figures frozen in their final moments, eating, sleeping, embracing, became silent witnesses to the horror. One observer survived to record the events. Pliny the Younger, who arrived with his uncle and carefully documented every detail in letters that would survive to modern times. Through his words, historians could reconstruct the eruption, later confirmed to have occurred on October 24th to 25th, rather than the previously assumed August. Clothing and market produce revealed the correct timing, cementing a tragic narrative of loss, panic, and the overwhelming force of nature. Pompeii's rediscovery was as accidental as its destruction. In 1592, workers digging a water tunnel under architect Domenico Fontana uncovered walls adorned with paintings and inscriptions, revealing a city frozen in time. Yet excavation efforts lagged for centuries, leaving much of the city hidden until serious digs began. The familiar people turned to stone were largely the result of human intervention. In the late 1800s, archaeologists poured plaster into voids left by decomposed bodies, preserving the final positions of the victims. To date, more than 1,000 bodies have been recovered, though only a fraction were cast. The remainder were removed as skeletons. Around 2,000 perished in total, mostly elderly, sick, or devoted family members who refused to abandon loved ones. Few wealthy citizens died, while slaves and the vulnerable were trapped. The city's tragedy provides the most complete view of Roman urban life, offering a glimpse into the past preserved by the very disaster that ended it. Houses like the House of Mysteries and Diam Villa reveal fragments of daily life and human emotion. Walls adorned with religious scenes and the bodies of 36 people in a single basement women. Children, servants show the intimacy, fear, and loyalty of Pompeii's citizens. Even after 2 millennia, their lives speak to us. They loved, hoped, and feared, just like we do today. The disaster was not divine punishment. Many who might have perished had fled beforehand. Yet the innocent and poor died while the wealthy survived. Their story is a testament to human vulnerability, the indiscriminate force of nature, and the persistence of memory. Life, even amidst catastrophe, carries meaning. The frozen city remains a haunting reminder that history is never distant, and that tragedy and resilience can endure across the centuries. Herculaneum lay just a short distance from Vesuvius, hugging the coast and cradled between the mountains and the sea. Its streets were narrow and crowded, its homes tightly packed, creating a city alive with energy and motion. On that fateful morning in 79 AD, the earth trembled underfoot as the sky above darkened with ominous clouds. At first, the residents hardly noticed, attributing the shaking to minor earthquakes or the usual movement of the ground. Smoke began to curl into the air. Small stones fell intermittently, almost like warnings whispered by the mountain. Fishermen along the harbor hurried to secure their boats, while families inside their homes glanced nervously at the sky, unsure if the disturbances signaled real danger. The city, so close to Vesuvius, was on the brink of a disaster far beyond anything they could imagine. As the morning wore on, the tremors grew in intensity, and the darkening sky became thick with an unnatural hue, signaling that the long-dormant volcano had begun its deadly awakening. The first deadly wave reached Herculaneum almost instantly, far swifter than anyone could flee. Unlike Pompeii, which had experienced hours of falling ash and pumice, Herculaneum faced a sudden surge of superheated gas and pyroclastic material that descended the mountain like an unstoppable liquid fire. The streets emptied in seconds, filled with screams and panic, as people dashed toward their homes in a desperate bid for shelter. Those caught outside were immediately overcome by the intense heat and noxious fumes. Their bodies were reduced to shadows of themselves, almost before anyone could realize what had happened. Inside the homes, families clutched one another in fear, praying to gods whose favor had once seemed certain. The doors and walls of even the strongest buildings could not shield them from the blistering gas that surged through every corner of the city. Windows shattered, roofs collapsed, and the suffocating cloud poured relentlessly through alleys, consuming all in its path. In moments, the bustling coastal city became a silent tomb, filled with echoes of panic, loss, and sudden death. As the pyroclastic flow engulfed the city, furniture and household objects were scorched or crushed beneath collapsing roofs. Archaeologists today have discovered skeletons carbonized and compressed, frozen in their final positions with haunting clarity. Children cling to their mothers, servants huddle by doorways, and the elderly lean against walls, helpless in the face of a disaster beyond comprehension. Unlike Pompeii's ash, which fell gradually over hours, Herculaneum's destruction was immediate, brutal, and merciless. Even the harbor was reshaped. Small boats were melted and twisted, the coastline altered by the sudden fury of the eruption. Streets that had once thrived with merchants and shoppers were now silent, littered with debris and coated in volcanic material. The city's entire rhythm of life, its sounds, smells, and colors, was frozen and erased in a single terrifying sweep. In this moment, the city was no longer a place of human habitation. It became a monument to the sudden and absolute power of nature. Despite the swiftness of the eruption, the preserved remains tell a deeply human story. Skeletons of families holding each other, servants positioned protectively around their masters, and children clinging desperately to parents reveal the instincts of love, fear, and protection, even in the face of certain death. Entire households were trapped together, leaving a haunting portrait of loyalty and connection amidst catastrophe. Archaeologists have uncovered household items preserved in ashpots, furniture, and personal belongings, creating a vivid snapshot of daily life abruptly ended. The superheated gases and molten rock obliterated most organic material, but the carbonized remains allow us to reconstruct the lives of the city's residents in extraordinary detail. Herculaneum's disaster was almost surgical in its suddenness, claiming life in a matter of minutes and leaving behind a preserved narrative far more immediate and intimate than that of Pompeii. The speed and intensity of the eruption meant that hope was fleeting. Families who had believed their homes could offer protection quickly realized that there was no escape from the advancing cloud. People prayed, whispered promises, and held one another, all while the lethal heat pressed closer and closer. Some sought refuge in basements, hoping the lower spaces would shield them, only to find themselves consumed as the pyroclastic material forced its way through every opening. The destruction spared no one, rich or poor, young or old. Herculaneum was leveled almost entirely, leaving the city's streets, marketplaces, and homes buried beneath layers of searing ash and rock. Today, these preserved layers provide a window into the final moments of life, revealing not just death, but the intensity of human emotion and instinct as individuals faced an unavoidable fate. Even in the midst of total annihilation, Herculaneum left a profound legacy. The remains of homes, furniture, and skeletons provide historians with one of the most detailed glimpses into daily life in the Roman world. The positions of the victims, locked together in their final moments, tell stories of love, protection, and human connection that no written record could ever capture. These remains complement the story of Pompeii, highlighting the different ways cities responded to the same volcanic catastrophe. Whereas Pompeii was gradually buried under ash and pumice, Herculaneum experienced sudden, instantaneous death, preserving an unfiltered moment of horror and human resilience. In this sense, the city's destruction is as much a record of human experience as it is a record of geological power. The story of Herculaneum also teaches a lesson about the unpredictability of nature. Vesuvius, long dormant, held immense potential for destruction, and its awakening demonstrated the vulnerability of even the most prepared cities. Citizens had no time to react. Survival depended on chance and proximity rather than planning or courage. The eruption reshaped the land, destroyed infrastructure, and eliminated almost every trace of life. Yet paradoxically, this same destruction created one of the richest archaeological records ever found, allowing modern researchers to study the Roman world in a level of detail unimaginable elsewhere. Herculaneum, in death, preserved life in a way that the living could never have anticipated. Today, the city remains a testament to both human fragility and the enduring power of memory. Archaeologists continue to uncover its secrets, piecing together the lives of its inhabitants, the structure of its streets, and the everyday objects that once filled homes. From carbonized skeletons to preserved wooden furniture, each find tells a story of ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances. Herculaneum, though destroyed, lives on in these traces, echoing the horror, courage, and resilience of its residents. Their final moments, frozen in time, remind us that human life is precious, fleeting, and often subject to forces far beyond our control. The city's story is not just about death. It is about memory, preservation, and the lessons history can teach us about the fragility and endurance of humanity. Herculaneum's destruction is inseparable from that of Pompeii. Together, they form a narrative of sudden disaster, unyielding natural power, and human vulnerability. Yet the difference in timing, intensity, and outcome between the two cities provides a deeper understanding of the eruption's full impact. Pompeii offers hours of suspense, gradual ashfall, and the horror of slow entrapment, while Herculaneum presents the terror of instant annihilation. Studying both cities allows us to witness a full spectrum of human response to catastrophe: panic, courage, desperation, and instinctual protection. Families clinging to each other, merchants trying to save goods, children reaching for their parents. All of these moments are preserved, telling a universal story about the human experience in the face of overwhelming disaster. Even after 2 millennia, Herculaneum continues to speak to us. The frozen streets, the carbonized homes, and the entwined skeletons offer more than historical date, and they offer empathy. We can feel the fear, the hope, and the love of people who, like us, had dreams, families, and daily routines. The city reminds us that disasters are impartial. They strike without regard for wealth, status, or moral standing. Yet from this impartial destruction comes a kind of immortality. Herculaneum endures in memory, in study, and in the preserved traces of life halted in its tracks. It teaches us that even in destruction, there is a story, a lesson, and a connection across time that binds us to those who lived and died long before us. Herculaneum, frozen in fire, and Pompeii, buried under ash, together capture a Roman world suspended at the edge of catastrophe. Through the meticulous preservation of their remains, we are able to witness the suddenness of nature's wrath, the fragility of human life, and the courage and love that persisted even in the final moments. Children, parents, servants, and elders alike are remembered not just as victims, but as people with lives, dreams, and emotions. The city's destruction may have been swift, unrelenting, and merciless, but its legacy endures. In studying Herculaneum, we are reminded of both the terror of nature and the enduring human story, preserved for future generations to learn from, reflect upon, and never forget.